Why are the religious so bad at absolutely everything? Why are they so blind to their own failures? That's a good question to ask our theist today. Not that I think she's capable of providing any coherent answers, because what else is new, right? Today, we're going to take a look at a channel called Lori B. Morrow, hosted by, well, I guess you can probably figure that one out for yourself. She has a video called Questions About God, How to Respond When Someone Wants Proof for God's Existence. And that would be pretty handy, wouldn't it? Too bad none of this is going to be at all worthwhile. So let's dive right in.
Hey there, so here's the conversation that you need to have the next time somebody comes to you and says there is just no proof for God's existence.
Oh, this ought to be good. Because here's the thing. We've been through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of theists and apologists over the years, and not one of them has ever been able to provide any evidence for anything. Maybe you might all want to get on that. Because here's something that no theist wants to hear. Faith doesn't mean anything. Faith is just the excuse that you give yourself for remaining ignorant. That's not something that you ought to be proud of. Try something better, like actual, demonstrable, defensible evidence. It can only help.
All you have to do is remember to ask these two simple questions, and you never have to get caught off guard again.
We'll get to those questions in a second, but truth be told, it doesn't really matter what those questions might be. In fact, I can't imagine any set of questions that might make a difference. Anything real requires evidence, and they have none. Invariably, whatever it is, it's just going to be a bald rationalization or an appeal to faith or something like that. It's really all they've got. So let's see what questions she's come up with. Who knows? Maybe it'll be something new.
Hi, if we haven't met yet, my name is Lori, and one of the things that I am on mission to do is to help Jesus-loving women just like you become a force for cultural course correction in the areas of faith, family, and freedom.
Oops, I guess that's not me. Of course, there'll be plenty in the audience, so we'll just keep on going. Nobody ought to be Christ-loving if there's no evidence that Christ is real in the first place, and I think we all know, going into this, that she's going to have nothing. Nothing at all. It'll be excuses for why she just wants to believe, just like every other video we ever look at. Still, I think it's only fair to give her a chance. So, can we please get to the questions? Please.
Now, if that sounds like you, feel free to hit the subscribe button because I'd love to have you around here every week.
No thanks. Come on, questions. Why do so many channels do this? And it's not just religious channels, it's a lot of them out there. Why do they spend all of their time trying to delay their clickbaity title until after the channel advertisements? Can we please just get to the point?
Anyway, I hate getting caught off guard with questions that I'm not totally prepared for. You know what I mean? When was the last time somebody asked you a question, you kind of fumbled for an answer, and then later you thought, oh my gosh, why did I say that? Why didn't I just say fill in the blank?
Sure, it happens. More so if you're talking about things that you are not well educated in, or which you haven't faced very often. That kind of thing does tend to be pretty common, and the only honest answer you can give is, I don't know. Perhaps with, let me go find out and I'll get back to you tacked on the end. Be honest about it. That's the whole secret. Yet a lot of people, religious and otherwise, they don't want to be honest. They don't want to look ignorant even if they are. And of course, this is often where ego gets involved. People don't want to admit that they don't know stuff, so they just make excuses instead of just being honest. If you don't know, you don't know. Find out. Move on.
Well, that happened to me yesterday. It was an easy question. I totally knew the answer. I just hadn't thought about it in a while. And so I tried to give it some flavor and totally tripped all over my words. Happens all the time with those of us who are Christians anytime we are getting asked questions about our faith, because you and I are so comfortable with our faith in Christ, we don't always think about the harder questions from an outsider's or an unbeliever's perspective. So what do you do when you get asked the question, why should I believe in God? How do I even know there is a God? What proof do you have for the existence of God?
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It is a problem that far too many Christians don't ask any real questions about their faith. They just want to believe. Most of them, when pushed into a corner, they will do one of three things. First, they lean on blind faith. Well, I just know that my God is real. Sure, how do you know that? They don't have any credible answers. Second, well, here's some philosophical arguments that I saw online. Yet those don't work either because they've all been completely trashed. And if she tries that, we're going to take it apart once again. Third, of course, they just run away. The very thought that anybody doesn't automatically believe in their imaginary friend, that makes their heads explode and they just head for the hills, often throwing around childish threats and empty claims behind them as they vanish in a puff of smoke. Now, I hope that she's going to be better than any of those, but let's see.
So the next time that happens, you only have to remember two questions. The first thing I want you to do is to ask them, what do you mean by proof?
Well, I don't ask for proof. I ask for evidence. Proof means absolutely nothing outside of coins and alcohol. You can't prove anything. You can only support it, and that's where the religious far too often go wrong. This whole thing is just a poor understanding of how we evaluate truth claims. That's hardly a surprise. So let's let her explain it. Maybe she's got something different than what we normally hear, but I wouldn't be betting on it.
Ask them to clarify what they mean, what they're referring to when they use the word proof, because quite frankly, what they usually mean is something like 100% certainty, which is a little bit of a ripoff because something that might make me very certain of God's existence may or may not make you certain of God's existence.
First off, that's not what most people mean when they say proof. And it's one of the reasons I try not to use the word proof. At least, not like that. I'm not looking for proof, I'm looking for evidence. We want sufficient evidence that would lead a reasonable person to conclude that your claim is true or most likely true. And that means that without your confirmation bias being built in, without your emotional foibles, we want something that would convince us, or a reasonable person, that you have the slightest clue what the hell you're talking about. And this is where they fall down. Faith is not a reasonable, rational, or credible path to demonstrable truth. And demonstrable truth is what matters. It's just wishful thinking for emotionally overactive minds. I don't care what would convince you. I care what would convince me. And it's funny how you never seem to have any of that.
Not to mention, it's kind of typical for people to have a double standard when it comes to certainty or proof about God's existence. For instance, they probably will demand, or they might demand, something closer to 100% certainty when talking about the existence of God, when they don't necessarily require that degree of proof for other things.
It's funny to watch the projection, right? Because it tends to be the religious that exercise a double standard when it comes to their imaginary friends. They'll expect real, tangible evidence for most things in their lives, but as soon as it comes to God, they can just hand-wave away all of the inconsistencies and just believe on faith. And that's why faith is entirely meaningless. You don't need a double standard. I don't care about your faith. I care about your facts. I have a single standard for all existing things. If it's real, then there will be evidence to back it up. So where is yours for your God? What she's starting to do here is digging up the goalposts so she can make a mad dash around the field. That way, when she has nothing of any substance to present, she can claim it's not her fault. The other side just isn't willing to believe what she does. Well, no, probably not, but that's because her standards suck. She's willing to give God a pass when she's not willing to do that for anything else.
Like the certainty that the new business they're about to start won't fail.
There's no certainty in that. If you're certain that your business is going to be a success, you are out of your mind. The overwhelming majority of new businesses fail in the first 2 years alone. You're a whole lot better off betting that you're going to fail and then doing everything within your power to avoid doing that, because it's a whole lot more likely that you'll be correct.
Or the idea that the person they're going to get married to is the person they should marry.
There is no the one. There are lots of people that you could marry and be happy with. If you're only looking for the one, be prepared to be disappointed a lot.
Or maybe starting a family, or getting an education, or getting in a car or an airplane to travel somewhere. We do all sorts of things every day, all day, without requiring 100% certainty as to the outcome.
And neither do atheists. This is just a lie told so that the religious don't feel bad when they can't convince their friends and family and strangers that their magical father figure in the sky is real. It's why channels like this exist. Not to provide evidence that the beliefs are true, but to fast talk those that already believe into remaining within the fold. That's really what apologetics is all about. They're not trying to talk to us and convince us that they're right. They're trying to talk to people who already believe they're right and convince them to remain that way. That's why these channels are such a laughingstock, because they're not concerned about the truth. They're only concerned about their feelings and keeping people paying their bills, which is all pretty sad.
But suddenly, when we start talking about God, we want 100% certainty there, and that's what typically people mean when they talk about proof.
How much do you want to bet that nobody has ever said any of that to her, ever? I mean, the apologists that we see tend to have some pretty cockamamie stories that they just make up for effect, but I think we all know this stuff doesn't happen. I don't expect 100% certainty for anything. I'm not even 100% certain that I exist, and you can't be either, let's just say that. This is a ludicrously unrealistic standard for anything, and I don't think for a second that anybody has ever demanded it from her. This is just stupid.
And then the second question that you're going to want to ask them is, what is it about the evidence we already have for God's existence that isn't satisfying to them?
What evidence? Because here's where the rubber hits the road. The religious love to say they have evidence, but they don't. They have claims. They have faith. They have books of mythology. Just because a book that you like says a thing, that doesn't make it evidence for anything. It doesn't make it true. We are looking for truth. Direct, demonstrable, objectively verifiable truth. Sadly, they don't have any of that. Now, hopefully, she's going to get into what she thinks that they have, but right up front, I'm going to explain why it isn't actually evidence. Evidence is directly demonstrable. If you say that X did Y, you need to be able to show that there is a verifiable causal link between X and Y. You can't just say, well, the book fell off the shelf, therefore goblins. That is not evidence. You haven't shown that goblins were responsible for the event. That's what you need to do through evidence. You need to show that there are goblins first, and that the existence of goblins or the actions of goblins or whatever is what caused that book to fall off the shelf. Instead, the religious just make empty claims. Well, a thing that I don't understand or don't like the other explanations for happened, therefore God did it. But you haven't proven that God is real, any more than we'd proven that goblins were real. You have to prove the components of the claim first, and they aren't even trying to do that.
Why isn't the evidence that we already have enough? Why doesn't it provide the proof that they think they need?
Because you don't have any. It's that simple. Just because you believe a thing is true, just because you have faith in a thing, that doesn't make that thing real. Truth doesn't come out of your head. It exists in the outside world where anybody can evaluate it. Anything in the outside world has to be directly, objectively demonstrated. You can't just assert that leprechauns cause earthquakes because that's what you believe. People are just going to laugh at you, and they should. You have to show that leprechauns exist and that in their existent state, they actually do cause the ground to shake. You don't just get double standards for your imaginary friends. I don't care what you want. You just don't.
Because the reality is, most people have no idea that there's already evidence for the existence of God. They just don't know what it is, or they don't understand it correctly, or no one's ever pointed it out to them.
Then go ahead, because that's the thing. We've been looking for this supposed evidence forever, and whenever we ask what it is, all we get is a bunch of touchy-feely, well, I just believe crap that doesn't impress anybody. I don't care what you believe. I care what you can demonstrate. Do something. What she's talking about, and hopefully she's going to give some examples, but what most of them are talking about is confirmation bias. They are trying to get to what they already believe. They haven't demonstrated that what they believe is actually true. They don't care about that. They're just exercising a double standard for their imaginary friends, and I'm sorry, that just doesn't get you anywhere.
And since they don't know that there's already good evidence, you need to know. You need to be able to rattle off a list of the arguments for God's existence.
Wait a minute. That's not evidence. Those are claims. There's a difference. You can't get to anything demonstrably real through arguments. Philosophy is the wrong tool for the job. Philosophy is great for concepts. And if you want to say that your God is a concept, great, knock yourself out. But concepts aren't real except as electrochemical brain states in your head. Concepts do not affect reality in any demonstrable way. If that's what you want to say, fine, I can go with that. You have a brain state. Whatever. It didn't actually do anything though, and that's what your beliefs claim.
You need to be able to ask them why they don't find the cosmological argument, or the teleological argument, or the moral argument, or any of the other arguments for God's existence satisfying.
Because they're crap. Now, we've gone into all of that before. None of those arguments actually get them anywhere worthwhile. Mostly, every single philosophical argument for God goes, well, I don't get it, therefore God. But that doesn't get you to any real, demonstrably existing God, does it? I could just as easily say, well, I don't get it, therefore the flying spaghetti monster. Yeah, so what? You take an argument, say the teleological argument for design. First, you have to prove that there is design. Not that you can interpret design, but that design actually exists. And good luck on that. I'd love to see a methodological system for separating things that are designed from things that are not, especially since, according to most religions, the entire universe was designed by their magical sky wizard. There is no such thing as anything not designed. So yeah, go ahead and explain that differentiation for us. Of course, that's just an assertion too. How do you prove it? And even if you could manage to do that, how do you show that your specific imaginary friend was the God who done it? You have to go through all of the steps, and they're too busy running for the end zone with a Bible tucked under their arm to realize or care that they haven't actually accomplished a damn thing. They just said, "I believe."
And get them to tell you what it is about those arguments that they don't really buy into.
Done and done. That's simple. It really is. What's hard is getting them to acknowledge the problems because they just want to believe. Every religion is like that, though. Try getting a Christian and a Hindu to argue. Pretty soon, they'll just be screaming at each other, "Well, I'm right! No, I'm right!" Because neither of them have any actual evidence that they are, in fact, correct. They just want to believe. They have blind faith that is based on nothing more than their own wishful thinking, and wishful thinking doesn't get you anywhere remotely close to the truth. You can't just say, "Well, my beliefs are true." You have to be able to back it up with something that doesn't rely on your faith. Go ahead and do that. We've been waiting for that one forever.
And other evidence as well, like the reliability of the biblical manuscripts.
That's just another faith position. Because if you ever really sit down and talk to these people, they don't know any of this stuff. They just want to believe it. The Gospels were really written by disciples of Jesus. Yeah, except they weren't. We have no evidence to support that. The Bible is inerrant, except it's demonstrably not. These are people who are completely out of touch with the best scholarship that we have. They just want to believe. But just wanting to believe doesn't mean anything.
Or the evidence for the historicity of Jesus and the resurrection from his tomb.
There isn't any. That's the problem. But it says so in my book. Well, so what? It says that Harry Potter is the chosen one and will defeat he who must not be named. Okay, prove any of that is true. They can't and they don't care. It's an article of faith, and faith doesn't get you anywhere. It just means that you want something to be true. But that doesn't mean that it is. The problem here is that most atheists, not all by any stretch, but the educated ones, the ones who have put in the time and the effort on religion, we tend to know more about the Bible and the Quran and the Vedas and all the rest than the religious will ever have any hope of. Not only do we know what's in their books, we know what's wrong with them, something that they just won't acknowledge. It's why they don't get anywhere with the non-religious, because they don't want to. They just want to believe.
Get them to explain why these things aren't sufficient already, and they probably won't be able to, and so that's something that you need to be able to do. When you can have conversations like this, you will never get caught off guard again when somebody asks you why you believe in God or how you can actually justify believing in God's existence.
You are doomed.
Hi, I'm Ralph. They think I'm touched, but I know something they don't know. You're doomed. Doomed. Definitely doomed. You're still doomed! Oh, no!
Because here's the problem. It only works so long as you're talking to dumb people. As soon as you meet someone better educated than you are, someone who just doesn't blindly follow what you get from the pulpit, your ass is toast. You are going to find people who know all about the Bible and exactly why it's nonsense, and can back it up with actual existing evidence. You're going to find people who can take those stupid philosophical arguments apart. What are you going to do then? I'll tell you what they're most likely to do. They're just going to run away. It's not like they can say, well, hey, maybe you're right. Maybe I should stop believing this crap. No, because this isn't about knowledge. It never has been, and it never will be. This is all about faith and emotional comfort, and that is positively childish. But what do you expect? After that, she just does a bunch of self-promotion, and I figure we've already wiped this one out anyway, so we're going to stop. She even says that she's going to email you nuggets of stupidity from the internet to deepen your faith. Don't look into any of it, of course, because you might actually figure something out. Just listen and believe. And that's just dumb. So that's yet another theist down, but what do you think? Should I take a look at more from this channel? I mean, I'm not the right gender for the content, supposedly, but stupidity knows no genetic boundary, so what difference does it make? Dumb is just dumb. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to take a look at some more of this, otherwise we'll just check this one off. This is yet another perfect example of where the religious go so horribly, horribly wrong. I wish I could say that I was surprised that we actually learned something, but we didn't. We never do. It never gets any brighter than this. There's always this low-grade, droning duh going on in the background, isn't there? Aren't you kind of tired of that? I mean, I know I am, but that's all you get from the religious. I wish we could find somebody smarter. Any ideas?
Bum